Judges, if you'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I'm Rita McCannon. I'm an attorney from Huntsville, Alabama. Our other two judges are.
Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Mackey. I'm in the history department at the University of Louisville and with the law school here at the University of Louisville.
Good morning. I'm Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and former professor of American politics at Hendrix College. Thank you all for being here.
How about you, before we get started, you all introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from or what your high school is or something. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning, judges. We are Unit 3 representing Team Indiana. We are 4 seniors hailing from Hamilton Southeastern High School in Fishers, Indiana. My name is Muntu Munaf. I'm the unit captain, and I will be attending Indiana University next year to study physics.
Hi, my name is Brianna Wright, and next fall I plan on attending Indiana University to study Public Administration and Affairs.
Hi, my name is Savannah Shealy, and next fall I plan on attending Purdue University to study Supply Chain Information and Analytics.
Hello, my name is Joshua Matisowski, and next fall I will be attending Butler University to study Arts Administration with a focus in theater.
And our coach is Ms. Chandler and our unit mentor, Ms. Kane.
Morning. Thank y'all for being here. Unit 3, question 2. Quote from John Adams. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You may begin.
George Washington referenced political parties in his farewell address and stated,
They are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government.
Intense debate over the interpretation of the Constitution led to the formation of 2 political parties that have been a prevailing part of American government since the country's foundation. It began with Federalists who argued for loose interpretation and Democratic Republicans who believed in strict interpretation of the Constitution. While Federalists believed anything not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution should be controlled by the federal government, the Democratic Republicans believed it should be left up to the people and states, as stated in the 9th and 10th Amendment.
Federalists in the North saw industry and manufacturing as the best means for domestic growth. Democrat Republicans of the South believed an agrarian economy would best serve the working classes. Federalists supported Alexander Hamilton's financial system, which included a national bank, federal assumption of state debts, and high tariffs. They saw protective tariffs on imports as a means for domestic production. In contrast, Democrat Republicans opposed the Hamilton financial plan as they saw the national bank as a way for the federal government to usurp power from states.
War threats from Europe also contributed to the rise of political parties. When Britain and France went to war from 1793 to 1815, the parties differed on which nation to support. Federalists favored Britain because of their close ties to American trade, while Democrat Republicans supported the French because of their democratic ideals, as well as for the much-needed support received during the American Revolution.
This political discourse has persisted to today, influencing the foundations of the 2 dominant political parties, Democrats and Republicans. A 2017 Pew Research study found that when interpreting the Constitution, 78% of Republicans took a look at the Constitution through an originalist lens, compared to 69% of Democrats who prefer the current meaning to be considered.
Republicans resemble the Democratic Republicans with a strict interpretation, hands-off approach to regulations and economic intervention, and maintaining U.S. military advantage. Democrats parallel the ideas of Federalists, as they support a loose interpretation, strong central government that allows social programs and federal regulations, and strengthen relationships with allies and the UN.
Many advantages and disadvantages exist in both unified and divided governments. A unified government occurs when the same party controls the executive branch and both houses of the legislative branch. Its main advantage is efficiency and productivity, as partisan majority support allows the passing of laws, ratification of treaties, and approval of judges and cabinet members to occur expeditiously. This efficiency can allow the president to make a greater impact with less resistance from opposing party. While this is advantageous for the majority party, it also may lead to partisan legislation being passed with little or no input from the minority party. It also does not incentivize bipartisanship.
Divided government occurs when different parties have control of the executive branch and one or both houses of Congress. It encourages bipartisanship and compromise on key issues. Both parties have input on enacting laws and providing checks and balances through vetoes and overrides. Its main disadvantages lie in inefficiency and polarization. The constant disagreement between parties can lead to government shutdowns, such as the one in 2018, during which funding was halted to all non-essential government services until an agreement was reached.
While shutdowns still occur under government, such as the 5 that occurred under President Carter's tenure, they are historically more prevalent under divided governments. Divided government can also lead to polarization.
As President Hayes said,
"He serves his party best who serves his country best." This is the conclusion of our prepared testimony, and we are now ready for questions.
Gentlemen,
Cool. Well done. Interesting. Lots to talk about, it strikes me. Your group takes the position more of political parties as a continual issue across time in American history. And that's a good way to go about it, a perfectly reasonable way. But still, this is one of those big topics that has engaged people since the 18th century to today of how do we channel strong personalities or strong passions about the issues of the day into public policy in one form or another. And part of what I want to ask you about here is thinking about political parties. How do they actually allow for or channel these personalities or public policy disputes and allow public policy to come forward? What is the advantages of political parties? Trying to boil it down a little bit more of it.
Just one advantage of a two-party system or major political parties is that it can simplify politics for most Americans and allow them to come together on certain issues.
Can you be specific?
Sure. Political parties act as an umbrella of certain factions within our political spectrum. As you can see in our current country, in the state of our current country, there are many specific factions within the political spectrum, and parties like the Democrats and the Republicans act as an umbrella. Whereas these political factions are so extreme in their views, political parties seek to push their agendas on the main stage and allow some of these political views from these factions to make an appearance in legislation.
said be specific. What kind of issues are under those umbrellas about which you speak?
Well, some issues some partisan issues there are abortion and gun control, and depending on your beliefs of gun control or abortion, you fall under Democrat or Republican. Republicans generally are generally against abortion, while Democrats are generally pro-choice. But whether or not you're totally against abortion or whether you're against late-term abortion, that depends on that. Those are certain beliefs that can still fall under that political umbrella versus the factions that are so hard set in those very specific beliefs.
And we can see with organizations such as Planned Parenthood and the NRA taking pretty strong positions and being a voice to the factions that are pro-choice or less regulations on guns. And so these factions are a part of the, like Josh mentioned, the general umbrella of Democrats and Republicans.
Well, y'all have tended to assume a two-party system. Could you talk a little bit more about third parties, their prospective benefits, but then also the barriers to their successful introduction in the American context?
Well, in regards to Duverger's law and political science, Duverger's law states that because of the current system we have, where there's a winner-takes-all system in regards to voting for district representatives, senators, and presidents, that it sort of promotes almost the polarization of the two parties. And because of that, we as citizens promote that clash between those two parties versus allowing third-party voters or third-party representatives to take a stand or make their own cases in regards to their beliefs.
In addition to my colleague Joshua's point, as you mentioned, there are varying political ideologies that exist outside the umbrella of the Democrat and Republican parties. One major political party that doesn't get as much spotlight as the Republican Democratic Party is the Libertarian Party, which takes a very hands-off approach to government and and to social rights. But a major barrier for these third parties to make a appearance on the grand stage is first off funding. As we see major players like the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and the Republican National Committee throw large amounts of funding to their main candidates, and also as Joshua mentioned, they also have a harder time making that appearance when politics are so polarized in our current status quo.
To add on to Muntu point, nearly $14 billion went into the 2020 presidential election alone, and this is very difficult for third-party candidates to raise such a large amount of money by themselves.
It's also trying to create a third party that has a pretty strong base that is differentiated from the current two parties. As you could see with the Progressive Party in the early 1900s, it did not garner enough independent support, and it was absorbed into the Democratic Party at the time, just because they both ran the same candidate, and they just determined that it would be best for both platforms to join forces to get their agenda through.
Rita?
I was listening. They have me fascinated. Given the historical context about which you spoke, and the fact that there are so many differing opinions, are political parties inevitable? Are there factions that could have sprung up, or do you think that political parties are always going to be with us?
I think political parties are ultimately inevitable, and I think that's a view that was shared by even our country's founders. James Madison spoke in Federalist 9 and 10 about the issues of political factions rising in our country, but he also made the concession that they were inevitable, as in when you have a country in our current system, which is a democratic republic, you're going to have differing opinions, and having differing opinions is ultimately, I would say, beneficial to our democracy. So, our founding fathers also saw this as a potential consequence happening of being in a democracy, and I overall think that it was an inevitable thing to happen.
I agree with my colleague Muntu, because we consider the Constitution to be the supreme law of the land, and because our founding fathers started political parties based on how we interpret that supreme law of the land, we see that just based on the foundation of our government alone, that we have differing ideologies on how that foundation can be interpreted. And so because of that, I also agree that political parties are inevitable.
We can see that with even like the adoption of the Constitution with the Great Compromise, when it came to representation, when it came to proportional representation and things of that nature. So we could see even when trying to adopt the Constitution that there was already parties and division within its members.
Thinking about your own futures as political change agents, do you see yourself engaging in these somewhat problematic political parties or in some other institution for change?
Because of the polarization between the two major political parties, I don't think I see my time is up. May I continue?
Go ahead, finish.
Please.
Thank you. Because of the polarization between the two political parties, I personally wouldn't want to associate with one until perhaps a more moderate third party gains traction between the two.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I know you saw me be speechless earlier. I was supposed to be asking you a follow-up question, and I was taking notes and writing down things because I was fascinated. And in particular, that you said you don't want to have any part, Joshua, in the political landscape until there's a more established third party. Do you, I know I can't continue to ask you questions, but I'm so impressed at how much attention you guys have paid to current events and how you've been able to meld them with what you learned about history and the formation of the parties. I just really appreciate how prepared you were and what the depth of your answers to us today. Gentlemen?
Yeah, I was impressed as well. My first question was about what do political parties do, and they force accountability of each other. That neither party gets 100% of what the powerful people or emotions of the day want, but it forces compromise, and we get something called public policy out of that. And you got there, and I thought you did a nice job of it. So that I think that you also did a nice job of covering the waterfront from the 18th century to today. So I thought you did well thinking on your feet and taking a position and defending it. So I enjoyed this very much as well.
Yeah, y'all were clearly incredibly well prepared. It's obvious you've worked very, very, very hard to get to today. And I think we're all even more impressed with that hard work in a very challenging and trying year in which to do this work. So I just want to thank you for your dedication and your commitment to this process.
Yeah. Good stuff, folks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Start breathing again. It's okay.
You're muted right now, but do we get off?
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, students. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.